Today's story takes place in the Flushing Chinatown of New York, one of the largest and most vibrant Chinese communities in America. The Flushing area has a main thoroughfare called Main Street, where you'll find countless shops steeped in Chinese culture lining both sides, restaurants serving traditional Chinese cuisine, supermarkets stocked with familiar Chinese foods and spices, bustling nail salons, and many other types of businesses. It's precisely this familiar and convenient atmosphere that makes many new immigrants from China particularly fond of living and working in this area. And this is also the setting for the tragic case we're about to explore. Zhou Jiaomei was just 29 years old that year, a young immigrant still quite unfamiliar with life in America. She was living in Queens, New York City, and commuted daily to nearby Connecticut to work as a nail technician to make a living. Jiaomei was born and raised in Fuzhou, a city in Fujian province in southeastern China. Coming from an ordinary family, she didn't have the opportunity for much education and had to start working hard to make ends meet early in life. While still in China, through an introduction arranged by acquaintances, Jiaomei met the man who would become her husband. The two quickly progressed to marriage and officially registered their union in China. Jiaomei's in-laws had rather unusual circumstances. Her father-in-law and mother-in-law had left their homeland years earlier to work and settle in America, leaving their son behind in China. Because of this, not long after the couple married, Jiaomei's husband decided to immigrate to America to reunite with his parents. The sad part was that at the time, Jiaomei was pregnant, yet she had to stay behind in China alone. In her heart, the young woman still held on to hope that this was only a temporary separation, that after her husband got settled with work and life in America, he would sponsor her to join him. But reality turned out to be far more cruel than she had imagined. Her husband had barely set foot in America when his parents on the other side of the ocean began urging their son to leave Jiaomei. No one knows exactly why they opposed this marriage so strongly, but the consequences were clear. The relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law became increasingly tense and fractured. Throughout that long period of separation from her husband, Jiaomei had to bear enormous pressure and humiliation alone. The endless conflicts with her in-laws, the loneliness of being a young pregnant wife far from her husband, combined with anxiety about an uncertain future, caused her mental state to deteriorate severely. Jiaomei suffered from psychological problems during that dark period. It wasn't until she gave birth to her daughter that her in-laws finally agreed to bring mother and child to America to reunite with the family. It seemed like things would get better once the whole family was living together, but reality proved to be the complete opposite. After arriving in America, the relationship between Jiaomei and her in-laws not only failed to improve, but actually worsened. Conflicts and disagreements constantly erupted in their shared home, making the family atmosphere perpetually suffocating and tense. The breaking point came when her in-laws sent Jiaomei back to China, forcing her to live alone for a period of time. It wasn't until around 2019 that things changed when her in-laws decided to purchase a house in the Whitestone area of Queens, New York City. Jiaomei was once again brought to America to begin life under one roof with her husband, her young daughter, and her in-laws. Jiaomei's husband worked in the construction industry in America, and while the work was demanding, it provided stable income for the family. The couple were similar in age and together raised a daughter who was 7 years old that year. However, on Jiaomei's social media accounts, there were only photos of her with her daughter, but absolutely none with her husband. This absence served as a silent indicator, revealing something about an unhappy marriage and the invisible distance between the two. According to neighbors living nearby, this family had always seemed rather closed off and rarely interacted with people around them since moving to the neighborhood. They lived quietly and kept to themselves, seldom chatting or participating in community activities. However, among the family members, Jiaomei stood out as an exception. The young woman had a tall, slender figure, long black hair flowing down, and a gentle, beautiful face that left an impression on everyone who saw her. Unlike the cold, distant demeanor of her in-laws, Jiaomei had a much kinder and more likable personality. People often saw her holding her young daughter's hand as they strolled around the neighborhood. Whenever she encountered neighbors on the street, Jiaomei would always flash a friendly smile and greet them politely. But in complete contrast to his wife's gentle image, her husband presented an entirely different face. The man seemed hot-tempered and unapproachable, always looking as if he were angry at the whole world. He never returned the neighborly greetings. When asked about Jiao Mei, the neighbors recalled that the last time they saw the young woman was in the summer of 2021. That was also when a shocking incident occurred that set the whole neighborhood buzzing. One late night in August of that year, while everyone was deep in sleep, the wailing sirens of police cars jolted the peaceful neighborhood awake. It turned out that Jiao Mei had called the police that night because she had been abused by her own father-in-law. News spread quickly through the neighborhood, with everyone talking about the incident, but no one knew the real underlying cause of this serious family conflict. After that terrifying night, Jiao Mei decided to leave home. She disappeared from the neighborhood without a word of goodbye. Her in-laws then had to spend considerable time and effort searching for her, and eventually they brought her back home. However, after that incident, Jiao Mei seemed to have become a completely different person. She rarely appeared or walked around the area near home like before. No longer could anyone see mother and daughter leisurely strolling along the familiar streets. No more friendly smiles and greetings when meeting neighbors. Jiao Mei seemed to have withdrawn into herself, hiding within the four walls of that troubled home. And by the time the tragic case occurred, the neighbors suddenly realized they hadn't seen her for months. But beyond the reasons mentioned above, Jiao Mei had another secret, a deeper reason why she no longer wanted to return home. She had secretly been seeing another man, making him her secret lover. That man was Wan Quming, a 52-year-old Chinese American, 23 years older than Jiao Mei. Quming was born in September 1969 in China. In 2003, when he was already in his 30s, he decided to come to America as a student. After completing his studies, Quming didn't return to his homeland but chose to stay in America to seek business opportunities and build his career. Life gradually stabilized, and he settled in the bustling New York City, where he met and married an American woman. This marriage gave Quming 2 children, and more importantly, helped him successfully obtain the coveted green card, officially becoming a lawful permanent resident of the United States. However, in recent years, Quming's business hadn't been going as smoothly as before, with income becoming increasingly unstable, while the cost of living in New York was anything but cheap. His 2 children were just over 10 years old at the time, at an age requiring significant investment and care for their education. Facing the pressure of supporting his entire family, Quming had to abandon his business dreams and switch to working as a full-time driver. Fate brought these 2 people together in 2019, when Jiao Mei had just arrived in America not long before. Their fateful meeting took place at a party within the Chinese community. That day, Jiao Mei's husband had received an invitation to a private party, and as a matter of courtesy, he needed to bring his wife along to meet friends and business associates. Jiao Mei had spent considerable time carefully doing her makeup and wearing her most elegant outfit to appear beautiful and radiant at this important event. And indeed, her gentle, elegant beauty did not escape Quming's notice. Right there at the party, Quming took the initiative to approach and strike up a conversation with Jiao Mei. Perhaps at first it was just typical small talk, asking about her new life in America, her work, her family. But their conversation seemed to click so well that time flew by unnoticed. Before the party ended and everyone went their separate ways, Quming and Jiao Mei managed to exchange contact information. However, after that party, their communication was rather sparse and faint. Both had their own families, their own busy lives and responsibilities, so they rarely texted or called each other. It seemed like this budding connection would fade away with time. But then, right around Christmas that year, Quming suddenly remembered the beautiful young woman he had met at the party a few months earlier. He decided to send Jiao Mei a Christmas greeting message, and that seemingly ordinary message became the starting point for an increasingly deep relationship. From then on, the 2 began communicating more frequently, their conversations becoming increasingly intimate. In truth, ever since that fateful party, Jiao Mei's image had been imprinted deeply in Quming's mind. The middle-aged man kept thinking about the beautiful young woman with the gentle smile whom he had met that evening. However, Quming was also clearly aware that both of them already had their own families, both had spouses, had responsibilities and commitments that couldn't be denied. Therefore, even though feelings had already developed in his heart, he didn't dare hastily express what he felt to Zhao Mei. But eventually, as the two grew closer through frequent conversations, Ming became bolder in his approach to Zhao Mei. He regularly took the initiative to ask her out to eat, invited her to watch movies, creating countless opportunities for them to meet and be together. Those secret dates continued. And after nearly a year of seeing each other, the two finally crossed the last boundary. They defined their romantic relationship, officially becoming each other's secret lovers, entering an illicit affair that both knew was wrong but couldn't or wouldn't stop. To facilitate their clandestine dates without being discovered, Ming decided to spend money renting a room in an apartment building on Main Street in Flushing. Whenever they wanted to meet, both would come up with various excuses, claiming to be busy with work, having to meet clients, or having important appointments to escape their family's supervision, then sneaking to the rented room to enjoy private moments together. The opportunity for this illicit relationship to flourish became even more convenient when Zhao Mei's husband had to travel for work, away from home for half a year. During that long stretch without her husband by her side, Zhao Mei and Ming had even more time and freedom to see each other. They met more frequently, and their relationship grew increasingly intimate and deep. Their secret affair became so open that other tenants in the same apartment and neighbors around knew all about it. They saw the couple walking side by side too often, appearing together near the apartment building, their intimate gestures unhidden, making it obvious to everyone that this was a romantic relationship, not just friends or casual acquaintances. Throughout their time together, Ming proved extremely generous and indulgent toward his young lover. He regularly bought Zhao Mei beautiful clothes and expensive designer handbags. Not stopping at material gifts, Ming even opened a supplementary credit card for Zhao Mei, allowing her to spend freely without worrying about money. When she weighed both sides of her life, Zhao Mei recognized the stark and painful contrast. On one side was Ming, a man who always gave her attentive care, expensive gifts, and the attention she had long craved. On the other side was her in-laws' family, where she only received coldness, disrespect, and even violence. Her husband was indifferent, her father-in-law was ready to beat her, and her mother-in-law had never treated her as family. Comparing the two sides, Zhao Mei's heart had completely turned toward Ming, her older lover. According to rumors in the local Chinese community, Zhao Mei had once been pregnant with Ming's child. The young woman had hoped this child would become a binding tie, a legitimate reason for Ming to divorce his wife and build a new family with her. In Zhao Mei's mind, she had probably painted many beautiful visions of a future with her lover, where she would escape her cruel in-laws and live peaceful days with the man who loved her. But reality was harsh. When Ming learned of Zhao Mei's pregnancy, his attitude was completely opposite to what she expected. The man was firm in not keeping the baby. He had no intention of leaving his current family for Zhao Mei. Perhaps for Ming, the relationship with Zhao Mei was just an extramarital fling, a diversion from his dull life, not a love strong enough for him to sacrifice everything. Afterward, Ming tried to compensate and soothe his young lover's pain. He hired help to care for Zhao Mei while she recovered, while also buying her many expensive designer items as a way to make amends and keep her by his side. Before long, more trouble descended upon their secret relationship. Ming's wife began noticing unusual signs in her husband's behavior. Perhaps it was the secretive phone calls late at night, the frequent late arrivals home with vague work excuses, or the hard-to-explain expenses on bank statements. The wife's intuition wouldn't let her ignore these suspicious clues. Determined to find the truth, she began secretly following and investigating. Based on the evidence she gathered, Ming's wife gradually realized there was another woman in her husband's life. Not stopping at speculation, she decided to hire a professional private investigator to follow Ming. The investigator captured clear photos of Zhao Mei, documenting undeniable evidence of the illicit relationship between the two. With these photos in hand, Ming's wife confronted her husband directly and issued an ultimatum. He must completely cut off all contact with his mistress. Faced with being caught by his wife and backed into a corner, Ming quickly revealed his true choice. In truth, from the very beginning, he had never intended to divorce his wife for Jiao Mei. So when he saw that his wife knew everything and was furious, Chuming immediately fell to his knees to apologize, begging his wife for forgiveness and firmly promising to cut off completely from Jiao Mei, never meeting or contacting her again. But after appeasing and calming his wife's anger, Chuming turned around and contacted Jiao Mei. He had no intention of ending this relationship as he had promised his wife. Instead, he told Jiao Mei that they should temporarily keep their distance for a while, wait until his wife let her guard down, and then they would resume contact and meetings as before. In Chuming's mind, perhaps he wanted to have it both ways. Keep his peaceful family with his wife and children while not giving up his young, beautiful mistress on the side. However, Jiao Mei wouldn't accept this arrangement. She had invested too much emotion and hope in the relationship with Chuming, had dreamed of a future together with him. Now, having to retreat into the shadows, waiting hopelessly without knowing for how long, was more than she could bear. She wanted a clear answer, wanted to know what place she held in his heart, wanted him to choose her instead of forever being the shadow behind his official wife. It was precisely these sharp disagreements and conflicts about the future of their relationship that led to a fierce argument between them right there in the rented room on Main Street. After that intense fight, both fell silent, neither willing to yield, and the Cold War between them lasted for half a month. During that time, they didn't meet or speak. Then finally, not long before the tragic incident occurred, the two decided to meet again. That day, Chuming and Jiao Mei arranged to meet on the familiar Main Street in Flushing. First, the two went to a Chinese restaurant to have a meal together. Afterward, they both returned to the apartment Chuming was renting. The apartment where Chuming was staying was fairly spacious with 3 bedrooms and a living room. However, Chuming only rented one of the 3 bedrooms for his private rendezvous. The other 2 bedrooms were where the landlord's family lived. The landlord was a man named Wang, who lived in the 2nd bedroom with his wife. The 3rd bedroom housed Mr. Wang's daughter and her baby boy. So, in total, there were 4 people from the landlord's family living in this apartment, plus Chuming as the tenant. On the day of the incident, Mr. Wang's daughter left for work at 9 a.m. and didn't return until 8 p.m. Throughout that morning, Mr. and Mrs. Wang were home the entire time and had seen Chuming moving about in the apartment. Around 12:30 p.m., the Wangs had errands to run and left the apartment. They didn't return until around 5:30 p.m. This means that during those 5 hours of the afternoon, from the time the landlords left until they returned, the apartment was completely empty except for Chuming alone inside. When Mr. and Mrs. Wang returned to the apartment at 5:30 p.m., they noticed that Chuming's door was still tightly closed. From inside that room came the sound of music playing, loud enough to be heard outside. The landlords didn't think much of it, assuming their tenant was resting or entertaining himself in his private room, so they didn't bother to inquire or knock. Time passed, and at 8:30 p.m., Mr. Wang's daughter also finished her long workday and returned to the apartment. When she entered, she noticed that Chuming's bedroom door was still closed, just as her parents had described, with no signs of anyone coming or going or anything unusual. But at exactly 11:23 p.m., that peacefulness was completely shattered. Mr. Wang's daughter suddenly heard alarming sounds coming from Chuming's room. It was the sound of a heated argument between a man and a woman, their voices growing louder, more tense, and full of fury. Mixed in with the argument, she could also faintly hear sounds like hard objects striking something, violent impacts that made the listener shudder. Her instincts told her something was very wrong. The young woman immediately picked up the phone and called the emergency number 911, reporting to police that an attack was occurring in her apartment and that immediate assistance was needed. The piercing wail of police sirens quickly tore through the quiet night, shattering the neighborhood's peace near midnight. 2 officers dispatched to the scene quickly arrived at the apartment where the emergency call had originated. When the 2 officers entered the first-floor lobby of the building, the sight before them immediately put them on high alert. Standing in the middle of the lobby was a Chinese man, silent as a statue, his face showing no clear expression. Beside him, right there on the cold floor, a Chinese woman lay on her back, motionless. The woman's eyes were closed shut, her body showing no reaction whatsoever to the commotion of police sirens. Upon closer observation, the officers noticed terrifying signs on the woman's body. Her pants, especially around the leg area, were soaked with blood, the dark red spreading across the fabric, creating a horrifying image. But what made the officers shudder even more was the long trail of blood extending behind the woman's body, showing that she had been dragged from somewhere else to her current position. Police confirmed that the Chinese couple in this tragic scene were indeed Qiu Ming and Jiao Mei. Just minutes after the police arrived, emergency medical personnel also reached the scene. They quickly conducted an examination and tried everything possible, but all efforts were in vain. Finally, they had to make the official announcement that Jiao Mei had died at the scene. Not missing any clues, the officers began following the drag marks of blood on the floor to trace their origin. The dark red blood trail led them from the first-floor lobby up to the second floor, finally stopping at an apartment on the second floor. Upon reaching the apartment door, the first thing the officers noticed was blood smeared across the doorframe. These marks only confirmed their certainty that something terrible had happened inside this apartment. The officers continued deeper inside, heading toward the bedroom that Qiu Ming was renting. The moment they pushed the door open, a thick, pungent smell of fresh blood immediately assaulted their nostrils. This bedroom they were looking at was no longer a normal room where people rested and lived. Blood was everywhere in that room. On the floor were pools of blood, some already dried black, some still wet and glistening. The mattress was soaked with blood, as if someone had been attacked right there. The furniture, even the white walls of the room, were spattered with bloodstains. Scattered across the floor were countless shards of broken glass, their sharp edges glinting under the lights. The entire space was in chaos, like a battlefield that had just witnessed a bloody fight, with furniture knocked over and everything in disarray. Officers carefully examined every corner of the room, not overlooking any detail that could become important evidence. When they entered the adjacent bathroom, they discovered 2 blood-soaked rags that had been discarded, as if someone had used them to wipe something up. Continuing their search, inside the closet in the room, police found a laundry bag hidden deep inside. When they opened it to examine the contents, inside were various blood-stained items, including towels and a woman's tank top. It appeared someone had tried to clean up and conceal evidence from the crime scene. When examining the only man present at the scene, officers also discovered more notable evidence. On Qiu Ming's feet, and even on his underwear, there were bloodstains. When the forensic team conducted a thorough and professional autopsy, their findings revealed the horrific extent of brutality in this case. The examination results showed that Jiao Mei's face and upper body had many visible bruises. Her lips also showed wounds, possibly from being punched or hit with a hard object. However, according to the forensic expert's assessment, while these injuries were painful, none of them were the direct cause of the victim's death. Jiao Mei's genital area showed extremely serious and frightening open wounds. Forensic experts suspected she had been brutally violated with some kind of blunt object. Moreover, even the victim's anal area had severe lacerations, clearly the result of being attacked and violated by a large blunt object. After compiling all the examination results, the forensic team reached their final conclusion about Jiao Mei's cause of death. She had been repeatedly stabbed in the pelvic area with a blunt object in a brutal and merciless manner. These repeated thrusts caused extensive internal organ damage throughout her body. Ultimately, Jiao Mei died from excessive blood loss. This was clearly a savage and utterly cruel murder. The killer didn't simply want to end the victim's life, but wanted to torture and abuse her in the most barbaric and inhumane way possible. The day after the horrific crime occurred, New York police began their investigation in earnest. The Wang family, the landlords who lived in the same apartment as Qiu Ming, were brought to the police station to give statements as the most important witnesses in the case. During the interview, Mr. Wang confirmed that from the time he and his wife returned home at 5:30 p.m. until the moment police arrived at the apartment after his daughter's emergency call, absolutely no strangers had entered or exited the apartment. The only person who entered the apartment during that time was his daughter when she came home from work at 8:30 p.m., and she had nothing to do with what happened in Qiu Ming's room. This statement was critically important in identifying the killer. It meant that throughout the entire time from that afternoon until the crime was discovered, aside from Qiu Ming, No one else had been in contact with Jiao Mei. The unfortunate young woman had been in Chu Ming's room all day, and the last person to be with her, the only one with the opportunity and means to inflict the horrific injuries on her body, was her older lover. Based on the evidence collected at the scene, along with witness testimony, police quickly identified the sole suspect in the case as Wan Qiuming, age 52. He was arrested on charges related to Jiao Mei's death. What sent chills down the investigators' spines was Qiuming's demeanor after his arrest. He showed no panic, fear, or even remorse. His face was strangely calm, as if what had just happened had nothing to do with him. He said nothing to the police, showed no emotion whatsoever at the gruesome death of his lover. The only thing he did was immediately request to see a lawyer. Concurrent with the investigation and arrest of the suspect, police also carried out the task of notifying Jiao Mei's next of kin about her death. When asked about the relationship between his wife and Qiuming, the husband admitted that he knew his wife was acquainted with Qiuming. Perhaps they had met at parties or social events within the Chinese community. However, he insisted he had absolutely no idea that his wife had been having an affair with the older man. On November 3rd, just 2 days after the horrific murder occurred, Qiuming was escorted by police out of the NYPD's 109th precinct. Under strict guard by officers, he was placed in a black vehicle and transported to court for his first appearance in the murder case against him. The image of the 52-year-old man with his emotionless face being led out of the police station attracted the attention of the media and the local Chinese community, who were following the case with outrage and shock. At the court hearing, Qiuming spoke for the first time about what had happened on that fateful night. With a strangely calm demeanor, he declared definitively that Jiao Mei's death had nothing to do with him, that he was innocent, and had not killed the young woman. To justify his claim of innocence, Qiuming recounted his version of that day's events. He admitted that the two had arranged to meet on Main Street in Flushing. They went to a Chinese restaurant and had a meal together. After eating, they both returned to the apartment he was renting, the room they often used for their secret dates. He insisted that during the entire time they were in the apartment, no one else came or went. No third party appeared. According to Qiuming's testimony, when they got back to the room, the two drank some alcohol together. Then Jiao Mei told him she wanted to go outside for a cigarette. Qiuming thought nothing of it and let her go. Then he sat in a chair and gradually fell asleep, perhaps due to the effects of the alcohol. When he woke up, he was horrified to discover that Jiao Mei had stopped breathing, showing no signs of life. In a panic, he carried Jiao Mei downstairs and called 911 to report the emergency. When the prosecutor questioned him about the horrifying blood in the room and the brutal injuries on the victim's body, Qiuming just shook his head and declared he had no idea where the blood came from. He acted as if he were completely uninvolved, as if the room had somehow transformed on its own while he was sleeping. Qiuming's testimony was clearly a clumsily fabricated story, full of holes and inexplicable contradictions. The presiding judge, after listening to his defense, expressed deep and serious doubt about the entire testimony. How could a room become a sea of blood while the person in it simply fell asleep? How could such horrific wounds appear on the victim's body without human intervention? Given the overwhelming evidence and the defendant's unbelievably implausible testimony, the judge ruled that bail would be denied for Qiuming, ordering him to remain in custody pending trial. The prosecution charged Qiuming with a total of 6 serious counts. These included second-degree murder, aggravated sexual abuse. Additionally, he was charged with tampering with evidence based on the clear efforts to clean up the crime scene and conceal his crimes, along with several other related charges. 6 days after the first court appearance, Qiuming appeared for his second hearing. However, despite the mounting evidence against him, he stubbornly maintained his position, refusing to admit to any of the charges. His face remained cold and emotionless, just as when he was first arrested, showing not a hint of remorse or regret for what had happened to Jiao Mei. The judge, after reviewing the situation, scheduled the third formal trial hearing for January 25, 2022, allowing both sides adequate time to prepare their arguments and evidence. However, the COVID-19 pandemic ravaging the world at that time severely impacted the operations of the American judicial system. As a result, Jiao Mei's case faced continuous delays. It wasn't until September 26, 2024, nearly 3 years after the crime occurred, that Qiu Ming's trial was finally resumed. After reviewing everything presented in court, the jury declared Wan Qiuming guilty on all 6 counts that the prosecution had charged. On October 8, 2024, approximately 2 weeks after the jury delivered its guilty verdict, the Queens County Supreme Court convened the official sentencing hearing for Wan Qiuming. Wan Qiuming was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. This means the 52-year-old man, at best, must serve at least 25 years before he could even be considered for parole, and at worst, he will spend the rest of his life behind prison bars. After the sentence was read, the Queens District Attorney emphasized that Wan Qiuming was an extremely dangerous individual to society, someone not only capable of committing acts of unbelievable brutality, but also cold and calculating enough to attempt to cover up his crimes. After savagely killing Jiao Mei, Qiuming showed no panic or remorse, but instead calmly took steps to escape justice. He tried to hide evidence by stuffing blood-stained items into a laundry bag in the closet, using rags to wipe down the crime scene, and even moved the victim's body from the second-floor room down to the first-floor lobby, presumably with the intention of removing it from the building to dispose of it. Fortunately, however, the timely emergency call by the landlord's daughter brought police to the scene before Qiuming could complete his plan to conceal his crimes. He was caught red-handed, with no way to deny it. So why did Qiuming treat Jiao Mei so brutally and savagely? Unfortunately, no one can know the exact answer. From the time of his arrest until his conviction, Qiuming stubbornly refused to admit to any of the charges and revealed nothing about the true motive behind his criminal actions. However, based on the complex relationship between the two over the course of 2 years, we can make some inferences. It's very possible that during their fateful meeting that day, after half a month of tense Cold War, Jiao Mei once again demanded that Qiuming divorce his wife to be officially with her. However, Qiuming refused. His outright rejection may have sparked an intense argument between them. And as the argument escalated, Qiuming completely lost control. All the pent-up rage inside him, the frustration of being pressured by his mistress, all of it exploded beyond restraint. He unleashed everything upon Jiao Mei through extremely savage and inhumane means, until she drew her last breath in agony and despair. Looking back at this entire heartbreaking tragedy, we can't help but feel sorrow and reflect on the profound lessons it leaves behind. The story of Jiao Mei and Qiuming isn't merely a murder case within the Chinese community in New York. It's also a mirror reflecting the dark corners of the human heart, the immeasurable consequences of illicit relationships, and the price paid for wrong decisions in life. This case also sounds a warning bell about extramarital affairs and the hidden dangers they can bring. When 2 people enter into an illicit relationship, they're not only betraying their spouses, but also placing themselves in situations beyond their control. Jiao Mei had placed all her trust and hope in a man she didn't truly understand, and the price she paid was her very life. And that's today's case. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.